Hello, wannabes and creators, and welcome back to another episode of The Business of Art, the podcast that hopes to demystify art for businessmen and businessmen for artists, but really only does a good job of the second one. Today we have a very special guest, Johnny Scotch, also known as John Dover. He is a really cool cat because he is a trumpet player, and that is his full-time gig. Now, we haven't had a music person on the podcast yet, but this podcast is specifically for all artists. So, musicians, artists, sculptors, writers. If you do something artistic, this podcast is for you to help you think about it like a business person. And I'm very excited to have John on the program in order to talk about that. Now, he also has a comic book called Johnny Scotch, and it's pretty fantastic. It is a noir book, and it's all black and white. It reminds me a lot of Sin City meets Fables, except without the magic. So most of it is all in these like really cool caption, novel, prose noir vignettes, and I love that about it. This whole first arc is 4 episodes, and he's talking about how to incorporate music and how to make art a part of your life and how to make your art a business, most importantly, and not just as a comic book person but also as a musician, which he's been doing for a long time. So please sit back and enjoy this. Today we are still in the throes of our Kickstarter, so please go to our website or go to Kickstarter.com and look for My Father Didn't Kill Himself. It is about a girl whose father commits suicide, and against all reason, logic, and evidence, she is convinced that his death is a murder and sets out to prove as such so she doesn't lose her family house. So it's a story of grief, loss, and just like anything else that I write and we put out, a lot of wit and a lot of humor, even though it's very, very dark humor. Also, if you are interested in finding more information about how we do things over at Kickstarter University, we are helping people build artistic careers and launch their products, launch their dreams, and think of themselves as a business just like we do at the Business of Art. All right, guys, that's all for me. Have a great day and enjoy the episode. Bye-bye. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Business of Art, the show that tries to demystify art for businessmen and business for artists, but let's be honest, really only does the last part. Today we have a very special guest, John Dover, creator of Johnny Scotch, musician, educator, and all along awesome dude. Hey, John, how you doing today?
Doing great. How are you today, Russell?
I'm doing very well. So let's just get into it. What are you passionate about these days, John?
I am passionate about writing, Scotch, and music, which helped to birth the Johnny Scotch ideals.
I would say those are 3 pretty good ideals. What's your favorite Scotch?
When I can afford it, my favorite Scotch would have to be a nice 12 to 16-year-old Lagavulin.
You and Ron Swanson have a lot in common then.
It's true.
So this is a really interesting concept because basically you are a musician. Can you talk a little bit about your origin story and how all of this came to be?
Yeah, it actually started out as a nickname on one of the bands I was playing with, just because I was playing with a bunch of guys that preferred cheap beer, and we were at bad bars that would not get me good Scotch, and they decided I needed an upgrade in my name, so they just started calling me Johnny Scotch. But for whatever reason, the name just kept bouncing around in my head. Just, well, what would someone that actually would be named Johnny Scotch, what would they be like? Why would they be named that? And what would happen if you run into them in a good or bad situation? And because of my love of 80s action flicks and of noir novels, such as from like Dashiell Hammett and all those, and even the modern guys that write action adventure stuff. This character started to evolve, and about One Sleepless Night and 2,000 Words later, I had the start of the first Johnny Scotch story.
Awesome. And is this the first comic book that you've done?
This is our first fully illustrated comic book in the series. This will be part 1 of 4. Before this, last year we launched the brand with a short story with illustrations throughout, but it was primarily prose. So we liked the concept so much, we kept developing it. My illustrator got really into it, and we were going to do another kind of short story hybrid, but then he called me up and said, no, I'm doing this as a full comic this time. So that's how we ended up with the full version like we have it.
Awesome. So I'm looking at your comic right now, and it is 32 pages. It is black and white with a color cover. How did you come up with the tone?
Well, the tone was established by a couple things. One, it was established by budget. Black and white was just going to be less expensive than trying to do a full color concept book. But then even as we started to develop, my illustrator, Dan Schaefer, started to develop his visual concept, the black and white really grabbed onto the classic noir feel. My writing pulls out of those classic noir and pulp fiction novels, and the black and white just kind of went with the old 20s and 30s movies, and we just wanted to go with it.
Yeah, I was going to say this definitely feels like a noir book. I'm going to read the first caption box to just give you guys a feel of how the book sounds. The cold sting of alcohol licked Johnny's raw knuckles, snapping him back to the present like the pop of a metronome being brought to life. So it is very much noir, not just in the tone of the drawing, but also in the tone of the writing. And I love it when a script comes together with the art and they both meld together. So often you don't see anything like that.
Yeah, when it came to that, Dan, his and my relationship has always been, I give him pretty much absolute free rein to create his inspired vision of what we want. Which he appreciates, because then he doesn't feel reined in by, no, I want you to do this and this and this, A, B, and C. He now gets to create, he's got a blank canvas to play with.
Right, so do you give him any sort of script besides just the prose? Do you break it out into pages, or do you just literally just write the prose out and then hand it to him and he goes nuts?
We've been going with the concept of just giving him the prose. He likes to go nuts with the full writing.
How do you determine how long you should write something so that it comes across on a comic book page? Do you do your own breakdown, or do you just cross your fingers and pray?
A little bit more of the cross your fingers and pray. I try to keep my word counts to short story format, so around 4,000 to 6,000 words. As is, you see in this particular book as well, it's a lot of there's not a lot of conversation that goes on. So Dan really worked to incorporate a lot of the descriptive prose along with his drawings.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds almost like a novel when you read it.
Yeah, which is actually, it's been a little bit of a shock to some readers, just because, as much as I love the visuals and we want to express the visuals, we also wanted to take advantage of just a broad sense of the prose, combining the two. My idea for this whole concept is, there's two parts to the traditional comic book. It's comic and it's a book. So I wanted to make sure that I'm incorporating as much book into that part of it, and then Dan gets to incorporate as much comic into it, so we get a much more hybrid feeling and something for a reader to both digest visually and
Yeah, it almost feels very Sin City in the way that it's laid out.
absolutely. I mean, that's definitely an inspiration. I mean, Sin City, Road to Perdition. Um, the writers that are not afraid to write as well as give you that visual pop.
We haven't had a musician on the show so far, so I want to talk about your origins as a musician. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh yeah. No, I mean I've been a musician my whole life. I mean that's very um, contrived to say, I'm sure, but I mean I've been playing the trumpet for almost 31 years now, so almost my whole life, and music's just been a part of everything I've done. I mean, there's been more music than any other profession in my life, to be honest. Uh, Grew up in Montana, uh, and played trumpet in school and in church, and just grew a love for everything trumpet. I've always appreciated the idea that it's an extremely versatile instrument. It's allowed me to play classical music, jazz, rock, funk, fusion, reggae. There's just no real limit to what it could do. So it was creatively, it was a great way to feed my inner creative demons, if you want to put it that
Oh, I
way.
do want to put it that way. I love putting it that way.
Um, so, and I kept going through college. I went to the University of North Texas and studied music down there. I taught privately right out of school for a long time. A few years ago, I got picked up as an endorsed artist for Bach trumpets. So that gives me the opportunity to go into high schools and do clinics with kids and workshops and perform with them with their bands, as well as keep doing, the other creative projects that I love doing.
That's great. And how did you start? When did you know that this was the thing that you wanted to do with your life? And how did you go about? I mean, it's not a normal profession, so how did you make that decision first?
It was pretty much one of those situations where it was something that every day I had to do. So it wasn't that I was being forced to do it. It was that my brain and my inner self would not let me get through a day without picking up my horn. Even just for a few minutes, I had to do something with it. So when you have that type of drive and that type of push inside of you, your your only options are to be miserable not doing it, or to find ways to capitalize upon the drive and the talents that you are willing to and need to develop.
Yeah, I love that. I talk about the compulsion myself, the compulsion to create and the compulsion to have to do it. And a lot of people in other professions say if you can do anything else, then do that. But, I like to think that if you're not compulsed to do a thing, this job and this business is so hard, it's just going to wash you out. So that compulsion, I think, is essential.
Oh, absolutely. And and that compulsion comes in many levels. I mean, artists need to paint or draw, writers need to put words on a page, musicians need to, splash sound across the world. Lawyers need to, you know, do law, and doctors need to repair things. I mean, that's everyone has their own compulsions. We just have to be willing to find a way to make them work for us.
Yeah, and that's what gets us to the top of, what we're trying to do, right?
Absolutely.
So you had a compulsion, and how old were you when you knew you wanted to do music full time?
Oh, I was one of those weird kids that probably at about 11 or 12, I wanted to be the guys that I was listening to. I wanted to be someone that could be heard on a regular basis. So, of course, it meant I had to work really hard to get there. And I like to believe that I'm still working really hard every day to get there.
All right, what did was it Louis Armstrong or Otis Redding? One of them said, he was in the 70s and was asked, why do you keep practicing? And he says, because someday I'm going to get it right.
Yeah, yeah, we all have those little sayings, and they're absolutely true. If at some point you decide that you have learned all you're going to learn and you've done all you can do with what you're doing, you need to get the heck out and do something else because you're not meant to do
Yeah,
it.
and that's kind of the same with everything that you do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with writing, obviously I'm relatively new to the writing field, so I have so much to learn, and every time I put words on the page, I'm trying to do it better, and I'm asking people for advice, and I'm working to do something different and something that people can grab onto.
Yeah, there's a great Cyanide and Happiness strip that I always plays over in my mind. You know, the first panel. I'm not going to go panel by panel, but the general gist is the guy starts and says, "How come everything I write sucks?" And the other person in the page goes, um, "It's because you suffer from artist syndrome." And the beauty of the artist syndrome is when you finish something, you've learned from it, so everything that you do looks terrible by comparison because you've just moved in. And great news is it happens for the rest of your entire life.
That's right.
So you're at 12, 13 years old. You're learning how to do the trumpet, and you know that you want to do this as a career. And this is the thing that this show is all about. How do you move from 12 to 13 years old wanting to do this to now 30 years old actually doing it? Like, what was that first thing like? Did you enroll in college, or what did you do next?
Yeah, I did the the accepted route, which was, you go through high school, you play in band, you do your thing, um, play a wedding gig every so often, and then you go to a school that you can get an education from, and hopefully is strong enough in the things that you're trying to learn to help push you in the next direction. One of the things I learned over the years, and I stress a lot when I go do workshops and such, though, is that when it comes to creative fields like music, you can learn all the details and scales and everything you ever need to learn and all the music you ever need to learn in school. But one of the things they tend to not do for that particular field is teach you how to be a business. So regrettably, that's something that a lot of us we're thrown in the deep end, just like artists and writers. You can go and learn all the technical side, but it's up to you after school generally to figure out, oh, I have to have a website. I have to have a business plan of how I'm going to build this company. I actually have to be a company and file taxes. I have to, all these things that are important to actually survive the world, you have to learn on your own. So much like, any other creative field, we end up um, with our day jobs, grinding away day after day, trying to do our creative work on our spare time. So you get to be a very tired person with 18 to 20-hour days a lot of times.
So when you got out of school, you got a job and then you were doing this on the side. Is that right?
Yeah, I got out of school actually, and I was teaching, privately teaching, basically full time, about 40 kids, 40, 50 kids a week. And that worked for a while. But then, of course, more life happens. I got married, I had a daughter, and found out I needed certain things in this world, like medical insurance. And since there was no real avenue to have decent insurance and such of that nature, the best course of action from a survival aspect was to get a decent day job that would take care of those things. And that's when, yeah, I would do the creative stuff on the side, weekends and nights.
That must have burnt you out pretty quick, huh?
Oh, very quick.
Did you go to school for music, or did you go to school for something else with a concentration in music later?
No, I went to school. University of North Texas is considered one of the largest even though it's a state school, it's considered one of the largest jazz programs in the nation. So I went there to study and get a degree in jazz studies. Problem with that I ran into was that I was not very academically driven. Not being very academically driven meant I would sacrifice English class for practice time. So I got really good on my horn and very bad grades. And after 4 years of wasting money on college, I decided to just start teaching privately and taking
Okay,
gigs.
so that was your first job after college. You went straight from college to teaching your own private gigs. And how long did that last for?
A couple years.
Okay. So you're doing that, and then what did you do after that? Like when you decided you had to get, quote unquote, a real job, like how does someone who has a history of jazz studies doing private lessons for trumpet, how do you transition back to the workforce?
Uh, well, where did I go first? I went with jobs that were very eager to have um, charismatic people. As a performer, that's one of the pluses of being a performer is I've learned to deal with people and smile a lot. And one of those fields that works well with that is sales. So I bounced around to a few different jobs, everything from over the years, I've sold everything from apartments to hotel rooms to used cars. I mean, all the awful iterations of that.
So everything you think about when you think about the horrible sales jobs.
Yeah, pretty much. But they were jobs that you don't need a degree for and you can make a decent living at.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is so funny because my wife went to University of North Texas for postgraduate, and then I got into doing sales after several years of failed creativity myself. And I think that's great. I mean, for me, sales taught me everything that I needed to know about how to be a business, honestly, because the thing that I always struggle with, because I had a production company and a photography studio, and I always just wanted to do the art. And after that, being in sales, I learned, well, it's great you want to do the art, but you have to talk about the fact that you want to do the art also, even if it's awesome.
Yeah, and I think those fields, I mean, they're good fields for musicians to even get a cursory training in because they teach you how to deal with the word no. Because you have to hear no so many times before you hear yes.
Yeah, that's true.
And we love to hear yes, and we always get upset when we don't hear yes as creatives. But you know, because to us, our art, whether it's music, whether it's writing, whether it's uh, visual arts, our art is a consumable property that everyone should love. So when we hear no or I don't like that, it we allow it to, we take it very personally.
Yeah, do you think anyone's different though? Do you think any business is different? Do you think anyone likes hearing that no any more than an artist does?
No, I don't think they like it, but I believe that they learn to accept the no as part of the process.
Absolutely. That's a great thing. Let's unpack that for a second because I think accepting a no is so important. How did you sort of grow that ability to hear a no and still move forward?
Um, I had to do exactly what I said, which is I had to teach myself that it wasn't personal. This person's not rejecting me personally. They are rejecting or just choosing another option for themselves at that moment. Um,
Yeah, that's true because, just because I don't want to buy a Pepsi now doesn't mean I will never want to buy a Pepsi. It just means I don't feel like drinking soda right now.
exactly. And, sometimes that person wants to buy a Coca-Cola, which, that's actually good for Pepsi because, you know, those brands understand that having those other brands like them keep them alive. Because someone sees that Coke and goes, "That looks good, but I don't really like Coke. Maybe there's something else out there." So, the consumer has that option to find something that does appeal to them. So having these various products out there that are similar to us are actually great. I mean, competition can be a great fuel for our own sales.
Absolutely, because you have people that want a product like yours, right? And the hardest part of sales is when you have to educate somebody on what a product is. Like that, because they don't understand. I used to work at Aflac, and they did, the Aflac, it pays you what you work, whatever it's called. I forget what it's called now. But people didn't really understand, even though they knew the Aflac duck. They had no idea what this type of insurance was. So instead of just going and saying, "Hey, do you like soda?" Well, I have this cool soda. It's not Coke or Pepsi, but it's also soda. You had to say, "Well, I have this Flockamagoo thing. It does sort of what soda does, but not quite."
Yeah, no, exactly. And so I mean, that's one thing I was actually talking with someone the other day about, relating brands to other brands to help people understand what they are. Like when you're building a product description, like when you said up front, you asked me if my comic was similar to like Sin City. I'm not going to say no, it's nothing like Sin City. I'm going to say absolutely it's like Sin City because then it gives someone a connector, whether it's exactly like or entirely different. It still gives them a connector so that they have something to relate my product to that they
And
already
like,
know.
hopefully. Or they don't like, and then you don't have to waste your time with that person. What's the second best word that a salesperson can hear? It's no.
And the second, yeah, it's no, that's fine because now I can move on to
Yes,
another
the middle.
customer.
It's the middle range. Like, I don't want you to be in that middle because then I have to still focus on you, even if you're never going to buy from me. If you just tell me no up front, thrilled. Cool, bye. If you say yes up front, awesome, even better. But if you say, "I don't know, I'm thinking," I'm now spending time, energy trying to convince you that this is a thing you like. And if I just say, it's like Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, they're like, "Oh, I hate that book." Okay, cool. Bye bye.
Yeah, then you should move on and I can move on too. No, it's true. It's a numbers game, which they teach you in sales. You want to work for a percentage of closes, yeses. And you're going to have to ask a lot of times before you can get to that 20 to 30%.
Right, and we talk all the time about building a funnel. Is you have to have a very high amount of people at the top of that funnel because most of them are going to fall off by the bottom of it. We have I have people that have a few hundred people on Facebook and a few hundred like people on their mailing list, and they're like, "Oh, but like 80% of those people are going to buy from me." And I'm like, "No, you're not. If you want 200 people to buy from you, you need 20,000 people or 2,000 people so that you only have to focus on 10% of it because 90% are going to fall off before they reach your buying point."
Yeah, either from, lack of attention or just lack of interest.
Right, or lack of funds at that moment. I mean, when we ran a Kickstarter in September, and I had a bunch of people say, "Hey, how long is this Kickstarter going to go? Because I'm saving up for Christmas or I'm saving up for this or the other thing." And I was like, "Well, it goes to this time." They're like, "I'm not going to have money by then. Can it go to like the 12th?" And it's like, "You don't know how Kickstarter works." No, it can't.
Like, no, it cannot.
Right,
Thank you.
exactly. And the same thing with any launch window is there are people that are going to immediately come on board. There are people that are going to come on board for less than you think they are going to come on board for. That's the other thing, because you're going to have different triggers. You know, you have your profit maximizer piece that you hope that everyone goes to your core offer and your profit maximizer and all that stuff. But you also have these little ones like small offers, $5 for the digital download. You're going to get a bunch of people that stop right there and either don't engage at that moment or don't engage at all past the $5 trigger point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, in the music industry, it's the same way. It's like if I want people to come to a show, I'm going to invite 1,000 of them, and I'm hoping for 100 of them to show up.
10% attendance is a fantastic. I would love to get 10% of people buying the product that we put out there.
Oh, geez, yeah, I would I would take that all day long.
Online, it's more like 2 or 3% actually buy the thing that you want them to buy. In the time frame that you want it to buy too, because this is another thing about I love internet and marketing on the internet because it gives you a chance to look at your funnel at each stage, improve each stage of your funnel, and know exactly what those numbers are, right? And know who's talking about the thing that you're talking about, how many people, how many impressions. When you're in line at a show, it's a lot harder to get the hard metrics of exactly how many people are you're talking to. How many people did you invite today? Well, I got down a third of my things, so I brought 500, so maybe 100, but really, 5 of them blew away, so it wasn't 100, it was 95. Do you do any like ads or anything online?
I've done some just small ads. We have our regular web presence, which is through Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, my website, and then my email list is just the regular stuff. And then whenever we do, since I am a musician, of course, what we ended up doing was tying in a musical brand to the Johnny Scotch label as well. So whenever I do these live promotion shows, we're pushing the comic, we're pushing the music, and we're pushing everything. So online, Johnny Scotch probably has about 1,000 followers at the moment. With Facebook, John Dover has about 4,500. So I share that with John Dover. So probably around 5,000 online presence at the moment.
What about your mailing list?
Mailing list, local is about 500. And then we're just now starting to build that into a larger thing so that we can do some international stuff through our conferences. So when we do the cons, we're trying to get people to actually sign up for the list right now. We're such a new brand. It's not a huge list at the moment, in all honesty.
How do you get people to sign up for that list at the con?
Honestly, just asking. I mean, if they don't want to buy a comic, I'm like, usually the reasoning behind them not buying a comic right then are, well, I want to see how you do. So I'm like, great, why don't you get on my list here and I'll keep you abreast as to when our next one is coming out and the new things that are happening. And if they jump on, they jump on. That's wonderful. And then I just keep adding to that list as little as I can.
How many people would you say you get at a con?
We've done 2 Comic-Cons. I got about 30 of them at the last one. And those were the ones that didn't buy the book.
That's a lot of people at a single con. I mean, the great thing you said, and I want to unpack this more because it's sort of becoming a theme of the show, is you asked for it, right? And what is the worst thing you've ever heard when you asked somebody to be on your mailing list?
No, thank you. I mean, no. I mean, people are, and which is fine. And that's one thing I tell people. To move it back to the music thing, it's like, what's the worst thing that can happen if you try this? Or what's the worst thing that can happen if they say no? And like you said, and what we have to realize is the world is not going to explode if one person says no to my product.
Yeah, it's not gonna explode if 5,000 people say no to your product.
No, it's not. And even a no, I've still had a chance to talk to that person and plant a seed. Hopefully next time it's not a no, but it's a maybe, which, isn't our favorite word, but it's at least they're there. And then after a maybe, we've got a chance for them to say yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they say that it takes 7 touches before somebody is willing to buy for the most part. I mean, especially online, you get a little bit that if you're at a con that goes down and shrinks by a considerable amount because you only have the one chance to get it. But even the people that don't buy, we've had people at a lot of cons not buy at the con and then support our next Kickstarter or go through the process in the future and buy like one of our digital downloads, or they go home and they buy it on Amazon. So there's nothing really, there's no bad part of that no, because if you hand them, do you hand them like a card or something afterwards so they can check it out online? Or
Yeah, if they don't want a book, I'll give them one of my business cards. I mean,
right, and
absolutely.
most of those are going to go in a trash bin, but some of them are going to make it home, and then some of them are going to be looked at, and then some of them are going to be gone to your website, and then some of those are going to sign up for your mailing list, and then some of those are going to buy.
Exactly.
And that's what we talk about when a funnel, each step of that funnel, people are going to fall off. But if your funnel is wide enough at the top, it goes down and down and down, and people actually show up at the bottom of it. And they'll show up consistently if your funnel is big enough. So if you have to have 100 people to get one person to buy, and you only ever talk to 5 people at a time at a con or a day, then guess what? You're going to have to go 20 days before getting people on one. You're going to have to go 20 days before one person signs up for that mailing list statistically. But if you talk to 100 people a day, statistically, one person is going to sign up every single day.
Yeah, I mean, it's a numbers game.
Yeah, I love marketing and I love sales because it's basically just sociology with money, and I love sociology.
Well, and that's the thing. A lot of creatives don't like to think about that stuff. We get this idea that if I worry about the business and the money, then I'm not giving attention to the art.
And that's true. Look, that's true in any business. I don't think there's any business at all ever that is like, you know what I want to do today? I want to record this crazy car commercial that's going to go online. They want to focus on selling cars because that's how they make money. That's what their passion is. We hope. We hope that the owner of that company has a passion for selling cars. And that's what they would want to do, all things being equal. But unfortunately, no matter what the business is, people get pulled in 100 different directions every single day as a business owner, no matter what the business is.
Yeah, and you just have to understand that sometimes making that crazy commercial, that is part of the art,
Yeah, I'm.
because that's what helps get someone to give you a second look and to give you that third chance and to actually maybe dive in and see what you're all about.
Right, and it is about connecting with people at the end of the day, right? I mean, isn't this why we create art?
Oh, absolutely. It's all about, we all have this need and this drive to share a bit of ourselves with other people, even the most introverted of us. We want people to know us. That's the psychology of the beast that we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about you want to connect with your like-minded people, just like going back, like you said, the beast we were when we evolved. There was a little piece in us that wanted a connection with people who are like us. And in this world where everything is disconnected, what we can do is show art or show ourselves to other people. And if they have a connection that releases whatever trigger centers in the brain that's like, oh, you like the same thing that I do. That's incredible. And if we can move from I need to sell a book, which we all do. Look, at the end of the day, we all need to make money. We all need to live. We've all got mortgage and rent payments and trumpet payments and childcare and whatever other things that we have to do. But if we can just stop thinking for a moment about selling the book and focus instead about connecting with the audience, I think we're just going to have a better experience, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. And that's another part of just the sales mentality. you don't want to always be selling something to somebody. You want to talk to them. You want to connect with them. You want them to feel like they are a part of the process. And if part of that process happens to be getting your product in their hands, that's great. But as soon as someone feels like you're doing nothing but selling to them, they start to shut down.
Yeah, and if you can get to the point where you're just talking to them, guess what? The sales end up coming. Like if you do right by a person, sales tend to come. I've found that in every sales job I've ever had is if you just it may not come from that person that you were helping, but somehow if you just keep putting positive energy and good stuff out there and connecting with an audience, these sales are going to come.
Yes. No, I would agree with that.
One thing that I hate about big shows, and we do a lot of big shows. You know, we do San Diego, WonderCon, Kamikaze, did 8 this past year. Is that you're monetarily so invested in this con, like especially San Diego. You have to go there, stay there. You have to do the whole 5-day show, and it costs you an obscene amount of money that you have to pay months in advance. Like our thing was due in December, and the con's not till July. So you are out a lot of money, and it's very hard at those cons to be like, I'm just going to lose 2,000, 5,000, whatever the amount you spend on, and just try and connect with an audience. So your head is always triggered to sell, 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 and it's not fun.
It does get very hard because we do Salt Lake every year, which has been getting huge. I think this year they had about 127,000 people, or at least that's what they say they had. And I have found my best successes at that show have been, instead of saying, "Hey, you want my book?" when someone walks by, I say, "How you doing? Are you having a good time? Are you enjoying the show?" Try and get them to talk about their experience and get them to hang out for a bit. And then eventually it gets around to, "Oh, well, what are you doing here?" I mean, they'll ask me what we're up to, what our product is. And that's my opportunity to start sharing what we have.
Yeah, I go a little bit differently in the beginning. I always say, you want to see something cool, or you want to see a cool comic? And the people that stop, they're like, oh, yes, I would like to see something cool. And then I go into the pitch, and then I ask them, what's the coolest thing you've seen at the con so far?
There you go.
And you just have to be honest. You have to be like, I'm genuinely interested to know what their favorite part of the con is, because I can't leave that table.
Oh, no, you're stuck there the whole time. I always get asked, what did you get to see? I'm like, well, I got to see the booth across from me.
Yeah, I got to see the breakdown afterwards.
Yeah, and then everything tore down. Yeah, I mean, we stand there for 8 to 10 hours straight in one spot. Just because, like you said, we do get in that mindset of, I'm here, I've spent all this money, I have to do the best I can to get my product out there. And it's kind of a shame for those, us as attendees, because we don't get to enjoy the mystique of the environment as much as we would like to.
That's why I've been doing a lot of these like 1-day smaller shows, and I've been loving them so much, because generally what happens in these shows is you pay the day of, and then you're out the money. Even if it's $100, you're only out that $100 until the end of the day, and you're gonna sell something. You might sell $40 of stuff. I generally do okay enough to break even, and then I don't have to worry, because it's not $50,000. It's not five. It's not two. It's not even a few $100s to have to make back. I'm just sitting there enjoying people's company, and I don't have to worry about coming back again. Do you guys do any smaller shows, or mostly just the big ones?
The next one we're doing is the WizardCon here in Portland.
Are you doing Rose City too?
We did not do Rose City this year because the book was not done yet. So we missed Rose City by a day of being able to go to that. So So instead, we went to Salt Lake and did that and launched it there, and then we're doing Portland coming up.
Nice.
And right now, trying to get lined up for what we're going to do this
Yeah, I
year.
highly recommend doing smaller cons, shows at stores, everything that you can to do the smaller ones because the big ones they take a lot out of you, and especially if you're new, um, you can get a lot more from the smaller shows because the booth fees are $20, and even if you miss $20, at least you had a very enjoyable experience for a few hours. You know, it's like, all right, I enjoyed myself. I got to talk about my comic for a few hours, and you only had to be out of it, a couple days, a week in advance, maybe, or most of the time just that day.
Right, and I'm sure at those smaller shows, it's a lot easier to get to know the other vendors around you, so you have better chance at networking
Yeah, I
even.
mean, that's the big part that I've found since I started going to shows. We've been going to shows for a couple of years now, and the fans are great. I mean, I love all of our fans, and it's fantastic. But what I find is I get a lot more out of going and talking to the other vendors than I did when I was not on the other side of the booth because they are like, okay, we're in the same trench together. Okay, I've seen you at these other shows. Oh, you tell me about this show. And you have something to give back and you have war stories to go. And I've not been at a con yet, ever. I mean, we've been doing this for a few years now, but it's not like we've been doing it for 50. With where anybody at the end of Saturday is like, this is a really good show. They're all like,
Yeah.
ugh, this show, I can't believe, like, blah, blah, I didn't make any money. I've never seen somebody who went, this was a very positive experience so far. And so not misery, but that commiseration is something you can only get if you've shelled out money for that con.
Yeah, and I've run into both sides of it. I mean, I've been lucky enough to run into, vendors that are, always just ecstatic and just really enjoy the hustle of a show. And then I've run into vendors that, like you're saying, they by the end they just look.
Oh, but I'm both. Like I love shows. I mean, it's the only time that I get to talk to the audience. We have this show where we can talk to, other creators, but to talk to an actual audience person, to have someone actually say, yes, I will pay you $20 for this thing. I mean, there's some greater feelings in the world, but they are few and far between when someone goes, here is money to for you to give me your art and a piece of you.
There is nothing better than that feeling. I remember the first time that someone was willing to pay to hear me play, and I remember the first book that I sold to Johnny, uh, because it just hits you where your feels are. You just you want more of that. So it's very
The
addicting.
first show that I went to, somebody came up and was like, "This is one of the best books I ever read," and hugged me, and I almost cried. No, screw that. I did cry.
I would have too. I was ecstatic because our second year at Salt Lake, I had people coming back specifically to get the new book because they had bought my first short story the year before. And I feel bad in those situations because I'm seeing thousands of people a day and I can't remember who bought my book or didn't. But when they come back specifically and are like, I just had to get what you're doing now, and I look forward to seeing what you're doing next. I mean, that's someone you just truly appreciate when they do
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. I mean, we're at a little bit of a disadvantage in that respect because our books are always self-contained. So we think of it more like novels, where like Ichabod is a book. And so people come and say, when's the next Ichabod? I'm like, the next Ichabod is Katrina, and the next Katrina is my father didn't kill himself, and the next my father, like, these are self-contained stories. So we have people coming up and saying, I want to buy your new book, but there's got to be something very um, magical about someone saying, "Here's issue one, here's issue two, here's issue three. I bought one, I bought two, I bought three," and they just keep coming back as repeat customers.
Yeah, I mean the advantage to that is that I get to know that they appreciate and find something in that character, something very personally that I've created, that they want coming back for more. So it gets me going back to my computer to write more of that character.
I mean, in some respects, it's easier to sell an issue 1 because people are giving it a chance. But when you start selling issue 2s, you're selling it to, your already established fans. That means if you sell issue 2, that means somebody read issue 1 and liked enough to buy issue 2. And that's very that's got to be a very special thought.
I feel it is, yeah. I mean, with our book, and what we'll run into with our product is similar to what you have right now, in that our idea is issue 1 is only one of 4. So then we'll have to make the decision at that point: do we make another Johnny Scotch series, or do we move into another realm? It'll be a little while till we have to make that decision, but so far people want number 2, so we're going to keep going.
Or do you do another thing in the same world like Sin City?
Right, which is definitely an option.
Well, let us move towards wrapping up and talk about specifically Johnny Scotch. And how about you tell everybody what the story is and what you love about it?
The first issue is a very fast issue, in that you get a very short introduction to a character in a really bad situation, and what you're going to find in coming issues is how that situation unfolds into bigger things. But Johnny is, I kind of crafted him after the broken detectives that I love seeing on the screen and I love reading about. Jack Spade from Dashiell Hammett, Lee Child's work with Jack Reacher, a little more current stuff. In the movies, I love the characters in the noir zone of like Chinatown and LA Confidential. These characters that are quote unquote good guys, but they're not necessarily good people. So it's interesting, it's interesting for me from a psychological aspect to play around with someone who's so broken and to see what they can do to make the world around them better, even when they don't necessarily want to.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit also of Bigby from Fables. So I'm going to give you the best compliment that I can give you, because reading this as it's on the screen as you're talking about it, I hate you a little bit because you can turn quite a phrase better than I can ever turn a phrase. I mean, I'm good at a lot of things when it comes to writing, but this line is very descriptive, elegant, and I can tell every single word is very precisely said. So listen to this second sentence before we wrap up. His evening has gone from drinking away the memory of blood-soaked hands grappling with Charlie's death weight to tearing through a pile of pissed-off thugs. I mean, that's a very intentional sentence. Like, I can tell you put a lot of time, effort, and energy with crafting every single word in that sentence. So, how long does it take you to write a script?
A little while. Just from the sense that I wish that these things came out in the first or even second draft, but in all honesty, they usually take me 9 or 10 passes on a full, 4,000 to 7,000 word short story to get what I want out of it.
Yeah, it sounds that way, and so I'm going to give you the opportunity to tell everyone where to find you before we sign off.
Awesome. Yeah, they can find us off our website, which is www.johnnyscotchjustice.com. And there's a store on there, which you can find on the left-hand side, where you can pick up Johnny Scotch #1 Lila, which is what you've been reading out of today. We also have my first short story in there, Ella, for sale. And I try to keep things pretty up to date on there as to what we're doing live appearance wise. With the music, you can always go to our YouTube page, which is found at youtube.com/Johnny Scotch. I believe that's correct. They always have too many numbers for me on there.
Yeah, I was gonna help you out, but the end is just for me. It's like watch question mark and a whole bunch of other stuff. So let us see if I can do this. I'm going to. Do you mind if I play you a little bit of the song of one of the songs, the Johnny Scotch promo song, to let us out?
Absolutely. The promo song would be great.
Okay, cool. So here is a little bit of the promo song for Johnny Scotch. Have a great day, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thanks a lot, Russell.
So that was John Dover with the comic book Johnny Scotch and, of course, his incredible music career. I really, really dug this episode. It gave me some perspective on how musicians think and how they operate, and showed me, honestly, that art is art is art. And we all need to think of it like a business, no matter whether we're musicians, sculptors, writers, or anything else. So, thank you guys so much for joining us. Remember, please go to Kickstarter and look for My Father Didn't Kill Himself. And on top of that, please, please, please go to Kickstarter University. Download our free courses. See what we have to offer. See what we're all about. You know, do what you can to get as much free knowledge as humanly possible. And then if you like it, you know, sign up for some of our mini courses if you like. All right, man. Thank you so much, Kevin MacLeod, for our theme music. As always, bumping and thumping while I am recording this and when I am editing. Thank you so much. Have a great day. See you next time.